Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, one more big topic that I do want to get to, okay? And it involves a program and a fan base. I don't think North Carolina fans don't like me. I think what it is with North Carolina fans is that I'm realistic about their program. And I think honesty hurts sometimes. You know, it's funny. I get accused of being a homer of so many different teams and so many different schools, and Torres, you you kissed Dan Hurley's butt. Well, Dan Hurley just won 2 national championships in the last 3 years. Oh, you kissed Mark Pope's butt. Well, in year 1, Mark Pope went to the Sweet 16, and when he had a healthy team, he beat Florida. He beat whoever, Duke. He beat whatever. He beat, I can't even remember who they beat in the early part of the season. They beat Florida. They beat Duke. They beat Gonzaga. They were awesome. Like, you want me to be critical of Mark Pope when he had a top 5 team, when he was fully healthy? So the point I'm trying to make is, I think Carolina fans, I think some of them get mad at me, but I think the counter to that is I think some of them appreciate the honesty. And right now, I'm still trying to figure out what North Carolina is doing, okay? And I go back to a few weeks ago. I did a segment where I basically broke down the entire roster. And I said, look, this was a very crucial offseason for the North Carolina Tar Heels. And it was an offseason where they raised a bunch of NIL money, where they hired a GM, Jim Tanner, an agent from the NBA world who had North Carolina ties. And the expectation was, we're full speed ahead in the portal. We're going to crush it. We're going to come in with a top 5 team next year. And I've said it, and I believe it. I don't think North Carolina on paper is better today than they were at this time last year when they had all these guys, including Drake Powell. And so the news item today is that Drake Powell, former 5-star McDonald's All-American, played 1 season at North Carolina. He is another player that officially withdrew from college and is staying in the NBA draft for good. Said, I'm all in. I'm done at Carolina. And I don't really want to use this to have a conversation about Drake Powell. I think he's a fringe first-round pick. I think he's a developmental player. I think he's probably 2 years away from being a year away. In other words, I don't think he's anywhere close to being a contributor in the NBA. But I do want to use this as a conversation to talk about what the heck is going on at North Carolina. Because, again, I don't think they're any better. And let me also add this, is he had a quote that I think if I was a Carolina fan, I don't know that I would be thrilled to hear this from a player who just decided to leave after a relatively forgettable freshman year. He told the media, and I think he was trying to be a little bit protective because I think he likes that staff, but he said, quote, I feel like I'm the same two-way player that I was coming into college. Obviously, I don't think I got to showcase that at UNC, but the potential is still there. I'm ready to learn as much as I can and continue to grow. Now, listen, I'll say this. I'll defend UNC. There's always a little delusion with there's delusion with everybody, right? I mean, you ask me, I think I'm the best to ever do this, that, the other thing. So I think there's a little bit of delusion in all of us, but I think there's a little delusion in him. I think he got plenty of a chance. I don't think he was good enough offensively. I think he was too loose with the ball. I don't think he shot well enough, but I will say the tools are there. He tested off the charts. And so, yeah. So he's gone. Don't love the comments, but I think it speaks to a conversation about North Carolina because, as I've said twice now, and we're going to get to some of the other guys in this draft in just a moment, but as I've said, I don't feel like North Carolina is a fundamentally better team than they were at this time last year, and that's a big concern. Ian Jackson, I know he had his faults, but goes into the portal, goes to St. John's. If Ian Jackson was terrible, St. John's wouldn't have wanted him. But he goes to St. John's. Elliot Cadeau just goes to Michigan, as we just said. A couple other guys graduate, RJ Davis, etc. Drake Powell decides to stay in the draft. Beyond that, the portal stuff has been a little bit underwhelming. Now, I like Henry Visar a lot. Henry Visar was at Arizona, didn't play a lot early when Krivas was healthy. Krivas gets hurt. Henry Visar steps up, averages close to 10 points a game, about 5-6 boards, block and a half, and he shoots the crap out of the ball. I think he's probably one of the 10 or 12 best players in the portal. By the way, I'll probably have my full portal rankings at this time next week. But Henry Visar was awesome, okay? I love that pickup. I'm more of a Jaren Stevenson guy than everybody else. I've seen what he can do when he's given an opportunity. He had 19 points in an Elite Eight game against Clemson to send Alabama to the Final Four. He's the big transfer outside of Visar. I like Caleb Wilson, the 5-star freshman. But who else do they have? Oh, Kyan Evans. Kyan Evans, the guard from Colorado State. I like him. I also just don't think that's enough. And if I'm being totally honest, even in the ACC, which I think is improved, but I don't think is anywhere close to the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10. I look at North Carolina, and it's a struggle to find a top 25 roster there. Again, no Drake Powell, no Ian Jackson, etc. You replace him with a guard from Colorado State who was good, shoots the ball well, but I don't know that he's a guard that's going to take over the ACC. Caleb Wilson and Jaron Stevenson are both good, but I feel like they're kind of the same player. And then also Henry Visar. And so to me, this is what I want to do now. I want to look ahead a little bit. And I do want to be glasses half full towards, because I feel like I'm too negative on Carolina all the time. And I will say there are still some good options for Carolina out there. What'll be interesting to me about Carolina is do they have enough NIL money, and can they convince one of these guys that's still in the portal that it's worth going to Carolina next year? Now, by the way, that Drake Powell quote probably doesn't help, but I don't think it really matters. And to me, I will say I will defend Carolina because I need to see their full offseason before I make judgment on them. And I think there are two players that could change the perception that I have of this offseason, because, again, to me, it's important that they add one more guy, like a dude, like an alpha, like a guy that can take over games, like an all ACC 18, 17 points per game guy. And those guys are still out there. I think the two obvious ones, the first one is Jameer Watkins. Now, Jameer Watkins is an interesting story. 18 points per game, played at Florida State the past couple years, actually declared and withdrew last year, declared this year. He is in the portal as well. And he's an interesting player because he said in all his interviews, he's been full speed ahead on the draft. And he is a guy that, he said publicly, I haven't talked to any schools. I'm focused on this draft process. Problem is, I don't know how focused the draft process is on him. 6'7" wing, who's a very good college basketball player. He's also like 24 years old. So he's not the kind of guy that you draft at 19 and you develop him for a year or two and you got a superstar on the back end. I think he's kind of a finished product. Doesn't mean he's not a good college basketball player, though. And if I was North Carolina, I'd be doing whatever I could to get him out of the NBA draft, back to college basketball, and say, hey, come to North Carolina and be a freaking star. Because if you come here and you're the difference between us being whatever and us being an ACC tournament contender, one, the NIL money is going to be great. And two, you're going to be a heel for life. That's a great setup. And I think he has that kind of talent. And I think, frankly, he's the kind of guy that needs, I hate to say it like this, but it's the truth. I think he just needs better teammates around him. He's a guy that tries to do too much sometimes because he just didn't have a lot of help around him at Florida State. You put him with Henry Visar, you put him with Kyan Evans. I think all of a sudden that becomes a much more interesting team. I think the other guy with Carolina that becomes very interesting to me is Boogie Fland. And we did a Boogie Fland segment, on Tuesday night? I guess it was maybe Wednesday morning, when he officially withdrew from the NBA draft. And I'll be honest, I do think Florida is the school to beat there, and I said as much in that video. But North Carolina, to its credit, did reach out. I believe it was Tar Heels Illustrated was the first one to report that. And if you're North Carolina, go all in on Boogie. Now, listen, I understand that bringing in Boogie does create some of the same problems that you had last year. Should have mentioned Seth Trimble will be back this year. But you have Kyan Evans. Boogie's one of the smaller guards, and I think part of the problem this year was your guards were too small. But that dude was one of the best guards in the SEC when he was healthy. Now, again, I know people have their concerns and their qualms with him. He was averaging 16 points and 6 assists and leading all freshmen in assists when he got hurt. You put him in the ACC. By the way, he was doing it in the SEC, never forget. You put him in the ACC where, there's some good teams. There ain't 14 NCAA tournament teams in that conference next year. You put him in the ACC, I think he instantly becomes one of the best guards. So to me, it will be fascinating to follow what happens at North Carolina now. Because again, I want to be fair. I don't want to be too critical. I don't love the roster now, but guess what? It's only May 15th. There's a possibility Jameer Watkins comes back to college. There's a possibility Boogie Fland comes back to college. By the way, I always say this stuff is always subject to change, so we'll see what happens. You could, by the time you watch this video, Boogie Fland might be committed. I don't know. Now, my thought, I've said from the beginning, I think Florida is the school that makes the most sense for him. You just look at the timeline. You look at the fact that they stopped recruiting Desmond Claude. I don't think they do that if they don't feel pretty good about Boogie Fland. But I don't want to judge Carolina until I see the totality of the roster. But I'll be real right now with this roster. I had to do some mental gymnastics to get them into my top 25. But I'm just here to say they have some work to do. They need to add one more dude as far as I'm concerned.